What if your grandma's suffering still lives within your DNA? Can the legacy of her trauma leave biological traces inside you? What if the pains he felt decades ago still shapes how your body reacts to stress today? Science now tells us that trauma doesn't just fade with time, it echoes through generation. Hi, I'm Dr. Rehan Pradhan, MD in Medicine, and today we'll be talking about the repercussions of gender-based violence and how its scars can travel through your genes. The United Nations states there is no region of the world, no nation, and no culture in which women's freedom from violence has been secured. At least 1 in 5 women in the world had been physically or sexually abused in some point of their lives. Violence against women and girls is a problem of pandemic proportion. Gender-based violence accounts for as much death and ill health in women of reproductive age group as cancer, and is a greater cause of suffering than most diseases combined. During the COVID-19 lockdown, behind closed doors, another pandemic was rising. The pandemic within a pandemic. Reports of domestic violence skyrocketed as 243 million women experienced violence by an intimate partner in 2020. And these are just the reported cases. Even in Nepal, the National Women Commission recorded nearly a 50% rise in gender-based violence cases during the lockdown. Violence against women fits into several categories, from domestic abuse, child marriage, and forced female abortion to rape, acid attacks, and dowry deaths. The roots of gender-based violence are as old as human civilization itself, persisting even in our modern societies. History bears painful examples like the sati practice seen in Hindu tradition, whereby a widow immolates herself on the funeral pyre of her husband, an act glorified as devotion but rooted in oppression. Bride kidnapping for the purpose of forced marriage was common throughout the history, depicted by many paintings. Thaupadi Pratha, prevalent in Nepalese culture, banished menstruating women into social isolation, treating them as impure. Many women have died during this practice due to starvation, harsh weather, or even snake bites. Even within healthcare, prenatal sex determination, female feticide, and obstetric violence exist. Pregnant women can sometimes be pressured into accepting surgical interventions that are done without her consent. A disturbing example is the so-called husband stitch, where extra sutures are added after childbirth to tighten the vaginal opening, not for her benefit but to enhance her partner's sexual pleasure. Many married girls are murdered due to dowry and even burned alive by families she was compelled to live with. In Nepal, gender-based violence wears many faces, from physical and sexual abuse to cultural violence. It's in the bruises hidden under the shawls, in the silence of a daughter-in-law who cannot speak, in the cruelty of being labeled a witch for defying social norms. It's in the story of a 13-year-old girl raped and murdered, whose case became a symbol of the nation's frustration, anger, and cry for justice. The world chose the color orange as a symbol of hope, solidarity, and freedom from violence. Every year, the world lights up in orange for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, from November 25 to December 10. Over the course of 16 days, the campaign highlights the importance of crisis centers, shelters, hotlines, and direct anti-violence services as a backbone of civil society activism to end gender-based violence. Yet, the question remains, are we just lighting monuments or are we illuminating minds? If you are a man, imagine a world where every step you take is judged for your clothes, for your smile, for your body, for simply existing as a man. Uncomfortable, right? Well, for millions of women and girls, this is the everyday reality. Every outfit is a debate, every street a danger, and every word a risk. But gender-based violence goes beyond psychosocial belief, as emerging science suggests it has a biological basis. Children who grow up witnessing violence do not just see it, they absorb it and they learn it. A child who watches his father hit his mom doesn't only fear the sound, his growing brain learns that aggression equals power. The daughter's growing mind learns that love comes with pain. Later, they might either become victims or repeat the cycle as perpetrators, making violence become a part of family's inheritance. Research has shown that exposure to parental violence increases the risk of depression, anxiety, and even chronic diseases later in life. What's both fascinating and frightening is that trauma may actually change how our genes express themselves, a process called epigenetic modification. In simple words, your experiences, the stress you feel, the fear you internalize, can chemically alter the way your DNA works. You don't change the letter of your genes, but you can switch them on or off. And sometimes these changes can pass down your children and even grandchildren. These epigenetic switches can alter with prolonged starvation, physical trauma like war, or even severe emotional pain. The Dutch famine of 1944 is one of the most striking examples. Pregnant mothers who faced starvation during the Second World War gave birth to babies who decades later had higher risks of metabolic disorders and heart diseases. And shockingly, their grandchildren also carried those same health risks. These descendants displayed reduced methylation, one of the off switches of a gene known as insulin-like growth factor 2, IGF-2, overexpression of which can heighten the risks of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disorder. The same pattern has been found in descendants of Holocaust survivors, people who survived the genocide of European Jews by Nazis. Their children were more likely to have anxiety, mood disorders, and dysfunctional relationship in adulthood, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, and even intrusions of Holocaust-related imageries which they didn't themselves experienced. Trauma literally writes itself into our biology. So when a woman faces violence, her body doesn't just suffer. That trauma can echo through generations to come. Because studying multiple human generations is difficult, scientists often use animal models to explore how trauma spreads through genes. In an experiment, male mice were given painful electric shocks whenever they smelled a specific odor, making them fear that scent. Intriguingly, their baby mice, who were never shocked, also showed the same fear. In other words, the lesson that mouse learned, that the scent meant danger, was passed down for 2 generations. This experiment proved a fearful fact about intergenerational trauma. But it has also given some hopeful insights. When researchers repeatedly exposed the mice to the scent without shocks, they eventually stopped fearing it. Their next generation no longer feared it either. Hence, though trauma can pass from molecular level, so can healing. Globally, the fight continues. The Me Too movement gave survivors a voice that echoed across continents. It showed that even the most developed societies aren't immune to gender-based violence, as it is just not limited to one culture or class. It is global, thriving whenever silence is rewarded. Even in the most picture-perfect relationships, violence can hide quietly behind their bright smiles and graceful dance. But amid the darkness, there are rays of hope, many glowing in digital form. Today, technology is becoming a weapon against violence. Digital platforms and social media have become lifelines for survivors to report abuse and seek help anonymously. Various organizations and applications feature in helpline section to connect victims with support system directly. Globally, AI tools are even being developed to detect online abuse pattern and intervene early. In Nepal, one-stop crisis management centers (OCMCs) provide integrated support, including medical care, legal aid, and psychosocial counseling, all under one roof. But technology alone won't heal generations. Healing begins when we change how we think as families, as communities, and as individuals. As prevention isn't just about punishing violence, it is about creating a culture where violence has no place to begin. It begins when father teaches son that strength is not dominance, and when mother teaches daughter that silence is not dignity. Because every act of violence today is a message returned into the biology of tomorrow, and every act of empathy can be the cure. So what if grandma's trauma does live within your DNA? So can her strength and compassion. If this resonates with you, do like this video, share it with your friends, and do not forget to subscribe for more contents ahead. Thanks for watching. Break silence, stop violence, and I'll see you in the next video.